Hello, just forgive me for a couple of things off the bat. I'm still kind of recovering from a bronchial infection, so I'll probably be sipping a little bit of water during this video, and I got my glasses on. Sorry about the reflections in them. But we're going to go over House Bill 7921. This is the Countering Antisemitism Act. This one's a bill, and all House resolutions, not all House resolutions are bills that are passed on to the Senate, but this would be the sixth or seventh. We have a problem with anti-Semitism, and we're going to vehemently stand against it. This is, I think, the seventh one that has been passed in the last 18 months. So this is what Congress does with your tax dollars and their grossly inflated salaries, is they waffle over redundant platitudes over and fucking over. But this particular bill is not just the House and the United States government repeatedly affirming that it is a pro-Israel Zionist state that puts the rights and needs of Jewish citizens of both America and Israel above any and everybody else's at all terms. By the way, what I just told you is a violation of this bill if it were passed into law. But this is extremely unconstitutional. It's a complete violation of the First Amendment. And the reason why shit like this keeps getting passed over and over again is to try to normalize treating the citizens of this country that are of this ethno-religious group as super citizens who are treated differently in a superior manner and with extra protections than any other demographic in the entire United States. And the reason why they continue to keep fucking doing this is because saying almost any of the shit that I'm about to read to you off this bill towards any kind of Jewish person or Jewish group is illegal in almost every single European and Western country in the entire fucking world. And there's nothing that makes this lobby, the Jewish lobby, more furious than the fact that the United States has the protection of the First Amendment and freedom of speech. And therefore they can't jail you for doing any of the shit we're about to list, or for even talking about any of the shit we're about to list. You know, keep in mind that they are the most powerful lobby in this entire country. We send Israel, we created Israel out of nothing. Well, technically Great Britain did, but the Western powers did. And also the Allied powers, excuse me. And also we send their country somewhere between $4 and $15 billion per year, rain or shine. And since Israel's currently perpetrating what some people would call, I'm not going to outright express an opinion on this issue, but they are perpetrating what some people would call a Holocaust on the remaining territories that they don't control of the Gaza Strip and the remainder of Palestine that they have largely completely erased off the map since 1947. Just go ahead sometime and look at the territory of Israel when it was created versus after the war in 1947 and the war in 1955. It was either 55 or 58, and then what they've expanded illegally since the intervening half century. You'll notice a pattern of what some people might call colonialism or imperialism from this country. I'm not going to comment on that. I'm just saying some people have called it that. Okay, I'm just reporting on what other people have said. Speaking of what other people have said, let's get into reading the bill. This is going to be a long video. Apologies. Let me take a quick sip of water. Like I said, my throat is completely fucked up. The short title of this bill may be cited as the Countering Anti-Semitism Act. I'm going to warn you that the first 5 or 7 items on this are completely redundant. They all mean basically the same thing. And a lot of them are citing either old data or unsubstantiated or unexplained or defined data. So I guess we're just going to take all of these, just take on faith all this shit they're about to say. Okay, because they only cite a couple of things, and of course citing their own personal lobbies in AIPAC and the Anti-Defamation League and the American Jewish Committee. So again, some people may call this bias, but I'll try not to comment on that because I don't want to get this video struck. Okay. Item 1. Congress finds the following. Anti-Semitism, which is often called the oldest hatred, is a serious and growing danger for Jews in the United States and around the world. Item 2. In 2022, the Federal Bureau of Investigation found that anti-Jewish hate crime incidents had increased by more than 37% over the past year. Item 3, in 2022, the Anti-Defamation League reported nearly 3,700 anti-Semitic incidents in the United States. I assure you that that is not going to differentiate hoaxes or false flags at all. Just anytime, a what you doing, Rabbi incident might have occurred is going to be in there, as well as real attacks. But they also don't just include assault, but also vandalism and harassment, which is a 36% increase from 2021 and represents the highest number on record of anti-Semitic incidents as reported by the ADL. And the American Jewish community reported that 25% of Jewish Americans were personally targeted by anti-Semitism. What? Did you get, did somebody call you Shlomo on Twitter? Yeah, anyway. Jewish Americans are facing an unprecedented rise in anti-Semitic incidents following the October 7th, 2023 Hamas terrorist attacks on Israel. I'm going to briefly comment that one of the greatest concerns of the Jewish lobby in America is the fact that the left, who is normally their golem, who does their bidding and producing racial divides and hatred in the United States, has turned on them. Because part of the problem is, you may have noticed, especially if you're on social media, especially if you read hit piece journalism and yellow journalism like BuzzFeed or Haaretz or Huffington Post or the Washington Post or any of this shit, you may notice that a lot of these people act like they're white, but if you listen to them talk about themselves for enough, they'll say, no, I'm actually Jewish. So they act like they're white when they're attacking other white people. It's a smokescreen. When you find out these people are actually Jewish, they're both proud but also offended that you noticed that they're not actually white. But the thing is, liberals, who are normally their attack dogs, are not in on the bit. So to the progressive demographic of the United States, the progressive political party, the far left, Jews are not a distinct people. The Jews are white. And the Palestinians are not also a distinct people. The Palestinians are brown. And anytime a white imperialist country attacks the shit out of a weaker, poorer, brown country, it's colonialism, it's imperialism, it's evil. So a lot of the far left that had perpetrated crazy feminist terrorism and crazy far leftist and anti-white terrorism since 2015, and then, the same kind of people who are doing a lot of the Black Lives Matter riots in 2020 are now rioting against Israel, against the very existence of Israel, which has prompted a shitload of panic, as this bill is evidence of. But let's continue or we'll be here all day. Item 5 is rising anti-Semitism is in part being driven by the spread and amplification of anti-Semitic comments, tropes, and conspiracies, like the ones I just listed off to you a minute ago, on social media platforms, which can lead to physical acts of harassment, assault, and vandalism. Again, this is the equation of speech and violence, otherwise known as, coined again by a Jewish journalist, stochastic terrorism, which is a fun buzzword that these people basically mean that, hey, whenever we deliberately incite violence, that's fine. But anytime you express a disdain or disgust or just a disapproval of something from the right, that is akin to an actual incitement of violence, an actual call to arms for some hate group to do something, which is, of course, a ludicrous, it's not even a double standard, it's a ludicrous false equivocation. It's an outright lie, but that's what these people do. Okay, item 6, Holocaust denial and distortion, including intentional efforts to excuse or minimize the impact of the Holocaust, dishonor Holocaust victims and survivors, and reinforce the need for advancing accurate and comprehensive Holocaust education globally. That's a grammatically incorrect sentence. Let me try to read that in a way that makes sense. Who even proofreads this shit? Holocaust denial and distortion, including intentional efforts to excuse or minimize the impact of the Holocaust, dishonor Holocaust victims and survivors, is on the rise, period. We need to reinforce Advancing accurate and comprehensive Holocaust education globally is what this should say if it was not a run-on sentence. I have noticed personally that people who don't believe the Holocaust happened as described by the history books is absolutely on the rise. I do not disagree with item 6. I've noticed that. Not going to comment on that any further. Item 7, protecting the history of the Holocaust and recognizing and confronting Holocaust denial and distortion are critical to preventing anti-Semitism. The scary thing is that, like, look, there is a lot of actual debate on the amongst Holocaust deniers. There's almost nobody I've ever met who doesn't agree that these people were concentrated, mistreated, used for slave labor, and some were maybe killed in a horrible way, but Holocaust deniers typically assert that nowhere near 6 million people died, and the amount of people who did die, which was a large number, usually agreed on to be at least 250,000 people, died of typhus and neglect when the German supply lines were severed during the Allied advance towards the end of World War II. That is what Holocaust deniers I have heard said. I'm not advocating that position. I will say, however, that the Auschwitz site where supposedly like 4 of the 6 million Jews that are always cited as having been killed, if you look at the plaque out front of the Auschwitz Holocaust Memorial Museum, it says 1.5 million people died there. Where the other 2.5 million people die, I guess, in other camps. Don't ask questions. That's anti-Semitic. Not going to comment on that any further. Already pushing the line of what's acceptable, even just stating what other people have complained about or stated as what they believe. And even just going over a couple of actual accepted historical facts, of course, might counter the narrative you hear, and that kind of distortion and doublespeak is pretty common among this lobby. But I don't want to in any way endorse Holocaust denial. Okay, folks, I'm not doing that. Item 7, yeah, I already read that one. Item 8, Jewish houses of worship are increasingly targets of violent attacks in the United States, as evidenced by the deadly assaults in synagogues in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in 2018 and Poway, California in 2019. Those were a minimum of 5 years ago. Churches have been shot up, black churches by white supremacists. Just churches have been shot up by either satanic or paganistic or atheistic elements. A transgender person shot up a Catholic fucking preschool just this year, or last year, I mean. I forget, that might have actually been this year. I can't remember exactly when that happened. But look, many houses of worship have been under attack in the United States. This is a sick form of terrorism that is on the rise. Of course, who gets special treatment? The Jewish lobby, not anybody else. Okay, we're on to item 9. Anti-Semitic incidents have increased dramatically in many educational settings over the past several years, with many Jewish students facing discrimination or a hostile environment at schools. Yet these incidents remain underreported. Again, that's an unsubstantiated claim. Usually, this is a common tactic of all the left, which is to say that whatever is reported is increasing and is a fraction of what should be reported. It's always an assertion. I don't know where the data is. I'd love to see it. I will tell you, though, okay, this is a true thing. Okay, technically, this lobby uses the left to advance its interests, which are usually very pro anything anybody calls woke, whether it's mass migration, amnesty for illegal aliens, pro-LGBT stuff, teaching sex ed to kindergartners and shit. You're always going to find this lobby at the forefront of these kind of things that the general wider American public is either disapproving or outright repulsed by. However, there's a major problem that these people, especially the Jewish lobby, has done. You may have noticed many Jewish journalists. It's a phenomenon that's very commonly cited on Twitter. They will say they're white, and they'll say we white people need to do better, and they'll basically hide behind white people to spew anti-white propaganda. But if you actually pin them down on what they are, they will say outright, I'm not white, I am Jewish. And it's generally accepted by everybody who even pays attention that Jews are a distinct, not just a distinct religious group, they are a distinct ethnic group. They are not white Anglo-Saxon Protestants or white Catholics or white anybody. They're just a different, they're genetically different. Their genetic haplogroup is not Indo-European. So it's basically a fact that Jewish people are not white, but they like to hide behind white people because they look somewhat like white people, right? They have white skin. Well, here's the problem: is the far left has never gotten the memo that Jews and white people are not the same thing. So when they see the Israel-Palestine conflict, they see a wealthy, powerful, white, imperialist country oppressing a brown, poor, downtrodden country. And they're going to, as people who are anti-white in literally everything they do, side against the white people in the equation, which, again, are the Jews in this analogy. They didn't get the memo that Jews aren't white. And they're supposed to treat the Jews like they're oppressed and downtrodden, and it's actually the Hamas and the PFL or whatever I forget what the political party that of what remains of Palestine, which is, if you look at a map of Israel in 1947, look at the map of Israel in 1958, look at the map of Israel in 1972, and then look at a map of Israel now, and you'll see that it is kind of expanding, and only a couple of those maps are expanding as the result of a treaty at the end of a war. They're just kind of encroaching on territory that is not technically supposed to belong to their nation, but just everybody just allows it for some reason. I don't want to state a possible hypothetical reason, because that would be an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory. Moving on. Again, we're going to be here all day. Item 10. The Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights is tasked with ensuring that all students are protected on campus. Yes, there is a backlog of discrimination complaints that remain pending before the Office for Civil Rights. Okay, do universities immediately answer to, are they, beholden to the Office for Civil Rights in the Department of Education, or is that a DEI kind of, I don't know anything about the Office for Civil Rights, and I don't know why they're not, apparently, according to this bill, doing their job. I have a feeling it's yet another redundant government agency that eats up a bunch of fucking money and then does nothing but just take a paycheck. There's a lot of those in this country. It seems like there was an office that was created for a purpose that it's not fulfilling. Welcome to 99.9% of the American government. Excuse me. Item 11. On May 25th, 2023, the Biden administration issued the U.S. National Strategy to Counter Antisemitism. So the president has got initiatives that he wants undertaken in order to, again, specially treat these people first and foremost with the most money ahead of any other issue. Fuck the border, fuck general domestic terrorism, which has only ever been acknowledged by the Biden administration to be of, by, and for, and on the behalf of, and committed by white people only. No other group has ever, whether it's eco-terrorists, black supremacists, radical feminists, far leftists, student activists, nothing, just any sort of riot. It's just tell the police to stand down. It's quiet, mostly peaceful protest, except for when it happens to a very specific group of people, then Congress immediately gets involved with zillions of redundant bills that they spend shitloads of time writing and passing and voting on in order to violate the First Amendment to protect one specific segment of the population that is only 2.4% of the entire population of the United States. By the way, continuing. Item 12. Anti-Semitism can have unique characteristics including the evolving use of conspiracy theories that blame the various ills of society on Jews or attribute to individual Jews a variety of evil and harmful characteristics, including the portrayal of Jews as too powerful or controlling or deserving of hatred and mistrust. Too powerful. I guess I'm already in violation of Section 12 here. Anti-Semitism can also exist when individual Jews are held responsible for the policies of the Israeli government. How many of the Jews in Congress have dual citizenship with Israel? Ben Shapiro, dual citizen with... You'll find that almost every prominent Jew you're going to find has dual citizenships and will outright tell you that their first and primary loyalty is to their own people and to their home nation of Israel, and that America will always come second to that interest. They will tell you that to your face. But if you repeat those words that are almost verbatim out of the mouth of Ben Shapiro, almost verbatim out of the mouth of Nancy Pelosi, who isn't even Jewish, out of the mouth of Biden, who isn't even Jewish, out of the mouth of Chuck Schumer, who is, out of the mouth of Jerry Nadler, who is, I could go on and on and on with this. But to repeat the words that they just said to your face is hate speech. Just saying. It's not even a conspiracy theory. It is a fucking out in the open stated goal. It is a fact. It's not a conspiracy theory. Too powerful. Yeah. So this is basically banning any criticism of these people. Because again, like all bills like this that have these kind of bullshit, one-sided, unconstitutional kind of aims, the wording is always incredibly vague. But it's not just, stuff like this has to do with free speech. The fact that you have no rights at all, and haven't since at the very least 2003, is because of the Patriot Act. Because all you have to do is basically commit a felonious crime in America, and you can be, under the Patriot Act, no longer considered a citizen with inalienable rights under the U.S. Constitution, but an enemy combatant of the United States whose treatment can only be policed by the Geneva fucking Convention. You have no rights, just so you know. But that's a little beside the point here. Okay, so including the betrayal of Jews is too powerful, controlling, we're continuing item 12, and deserving of hatred or mistrust. Anti-Semitism can also exist when individual Jews are held responsible for the policies of the Israeli government, even if they outright admit that they support them, or attacked, disparaged, or demonized based on their real or perceived connection to, affiliation with, or support for the state of Israel as a Jewish state. So again, if you disagree with the creation, with the existence of, and the general practices, whether geopolitically or in war, or with the United States in giving the aid it does, both militarily and with foreign aid to the tune of $4 to $15 billion per year, as foreign aid, usually expressly for Israel's defense budget, which they use to bomb their enemies. If you were in any way, against that, whether you're a pacifist or whatever reason you might have to be against that, you're in violation, you are an anti-Semite, you are a bigot, you're a racist, in this lobby, and this bill would like for you to receive criminal legal punishment for having that opinion, just so you know. Anti-Semitism can manifest distinctly and require a tailored response. Item 13, while anti-Semitism most directly and intensely threatens Jewish Americans, it also undermines democracy. Does democracy even mean anything anymore, or is it just a term for the globalist agenda? Okay, democracy. How does having a bigoted prejudice against a group automatically undermine democracy? What does that even mean? And threatens the safety and rights of all Americans. Again, this stochastic terrorism bullshit concept again. That if you express a distrust or a disregard or a malignancy towards this group, you're automatically threatening their very survival just by talking about them. It's ridiculous. Section 3 is now a statement of policy and sense of Congress. Section 3A, a statement of policy. It is the policy of the United States to 1. Raise awareness and educate the United States public about the history of Jewish Americans, anti-Semitism, and all its forms of various manifestations. Raise awareness and educate about a specific topic, which is arguably debatable and not rooted in any particular way in historical fact or science, would be called propaganda. So it is the policy of the United States to explicitly endorse, promote, and disseminate pro-Jewish, pro-Israeli propaganda, pro-Zionist propaganda. 2, to use all available authorities to oppose anti-Semitism, which means to criminalize anybody who disagrees with this propaganda, and to use literal violent force to enforce the people to not commit the thought crime of anti-Semitism. 3, to ensure that the implementation of the federal government strategies to counter anti-Semitism are ongoing in a multi-year, whole-of-government and whole-of-society effort, including through close and consistent collaboration between the federal government, The private sector, again meaning the Jewish lobby, civil society and faith leaders, again the Jewish lobby, and community leaders, again the Jewish lobby, the ADL, APAC, the Jewish Committee. Take your pick. There's dozens of these people, and then they input billions of dollars into every fucking race for office, city, state, district, all the way up to Congress, the federal government. These people spend lots of money making sure they get their way. And even the left, the far left, will admit that money in politics seems to only favor people who put money into politics, which is usually not the average Joe who's just voting for their own best interest, but only serves the people who have the money to get special treatment. And the far left is correct. Money in politics is the root of all ills in American political society. Lobbyists in general are the fucking devil, and I do not believe the Jewish lobby is exempt from that assessment. Now, Section 3B, the sense of Congress. It is the sense of Congress that the non-legally binding working definition of anti-Semitism adopted in 2016 by the 31 member states of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. So these people have their own form of the United Nations, which is people that sign on to their specific special treatment, which is apparently 31 nations. A definition which the United States has embraced is 1, a valuable tool to raise awareness and increasing understanding of anti-Semitism, again, pro-Jewish propaganda, and 2, should be utilized by federal, state, and local agencies, so it should be enforced by not just policy, but law enforcement. Section 4, definitions. In this section, this is going to be the shit that pissed you off, so I hope you're still here. 1, anti-Semitism. The term anti-Semitism is the given meaning given in the term Section 3 and in the Never Again Education Act. I don't know what year that came out, but again, these people do these redundant acts over and over and over and over again. They say the same thing. It's basically a humiliation ritual. The members of Congress pass probably at least a dozen of these acts that say exactly what this act is saying. I'm reading to you per fucking year that all do the same thing, toothlessly rail against the Constitution in the hopes that they can chip away at the wall of your human rights so that they can be... I can't keep talking, can I? I'm going to get fucking banned. Let's see, in the section, okay, I think these are all just definitions we can skip over, but apparently whenever they talk about relevant agencies, they mean the Domestic Policy Council, the Department of State, the Office of the Special Envoy to monitor and combat anti-Semitism of the Department of State. So the Department of State has their own department, especially to complain about this issue. It's not just a lobby, it is an actual element of your federal government. Department of Homeland Security, Department of Justice, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, which is redundant, it's part of the Department of Justice, Department of Education, National Counterterrorism Center, which is redundant with DHS and the FBI, the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, the Department of Health and Human Services, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the Small Business Administration, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, the Department of Transportation, the Department of Agriculture, the Corporation for National and Community Service, the National Endowment for the Arts, the National Endowment for the Humanities, the Department of the Interior, the Department of Veteran Affairs, remember the USS Liberty, folks, the Department of Defense, Department of the Treasury, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, the Institute of Museum Library Sciences, the Office of Personnel Management, the United States Mission to the United Nations, the General Services Administration, the Department of Commerce, Department of Commerce, Department of Labor, the National Science Foundation, the Smithsonian Institution, and the Office of Faith based in the neighborhood partnerships of the White House. Here is the National Coordinator of... I'm going to skip over this section. Okay, now there's an interagency task force to counter anti-Semitism, so yet another redundant anti-Semitism thing. Okay, so here's where we're getting into the actual bill stuff. The president shall establish an interagency task force to counter anti-Semitism. As I just read in that list of redundant government agencies, there already is one. The president shall appoint members of the task force, which shall include representatives from the relevant agencies. Okay, so more salaries for you to pay. The national coordinator shall be the chair of the task force. The task force shall carry out each of the following activities: coordinate the implementation of federal government strategies to counter anti-Semitism, which again is illegal. Measure and evaluate the progress of the United States in the areas of providing education about anti-Semitism. By the way, the United States government, it used to be illegal for them to propagandize against their own citizens. It is no longer illegal. Obama repealed that act in, I believe, 2010. So that's why the mainstream news, cable news, and your schools all just spout government propaganda all day, because Obama removed those protections. Let's see. Create and implement interagency procedures for collecting and organizing data, spying on citizens. I'm kidding, it doesn't say that. Including research results and resource information from relevant agencies and researchers. Respecting the confidentiality of individuals targeted by anti-Semitism. Complying with any federal, state, or local laws affecting confidentiality. Not yours, just that of Jews who are the victims of anti-Semitism. Measure and evaluate the use of the Nonprofit Security Grant Program of the Department of Homeland Security, established under Section 2009 of the Homeland Security Act of 2002 to secure Jewish nonprofit organizations. So taxpayer money will fund all of this shit instead of wealthy Jewish lobbies. Engage in consultation with Congress, nonprofit organizations, and Jewish community advocacy organizations, among other entities, to advance purposes of the act. So the Jewish lobby will still consult on this. I'm going to skip over some of this. I want to get into actual implementation. Okay. So there should be a threat assessment on anti-Semitism not later than 180 days after the enactment of this act. As ran by the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, and the director for the National Counterterrorism Center. And of course, the National Coordinator to Counter Anti-Semitism. As I mentioned, this is a redundant agency. Okay, just overview of data. Everybody who needs to go over this, which is 9 different committees. Okay, here we go. Now we're going to get back into some relevant shit. I'm sorry, we're probably going to be here for hours going over this bill. We're going to go until I lose my voice. Section 8, Online Anti-Semitism, Holocaust Denial, and Distortion. I don't know exactly what distortion means. It's not defined in this bill. Probably to admit something happens, but say it happened in a way different to whatever the official source is for the event. Again, scholarly debate is not allowed on this topic. Okay, A, study in order to assess steps to counter the spread of anti-Semitism online. Okay, so this is going to be the same thing, but instead of real world, it's going to be covering anti-Semitic stuff online, and then the same thing in higher education, which lists again all these different stuff, and also introducing more mandatory Holocaust education into school curriculum. Let's see. Okay, so this is more pay millions and millions of dollars for study. The Nonprofit Security Grant Program, give more and more millions of U.S. taxpayer dollars to yet another grant on this. Okay, Jewish American Heritage Month. There shall be designated a Jewish American Heritage Month. These people are mad that the gays and black people and indigenous people and stuff all get their own month, and in fact the gays get 3 months. So there shall now be a Jewish American Heritage Month. Okay, again, if you ask these people if there will be a white or Anglo-Saxon or German or Irish or any of that Heritage Month, no, there will not be. And that's the extent of this stuff. But one of the things that a lot of people have found fault with is some of the language that has been tied to this particular act that I do not see in the text of this act itself, but it has been being reported on. There's also the related bills of like HR7921. What bill is this right here? I forget what... Yeah, but no, in trying to find just this particular act, I found no less than 9 different acts over the past 5 years, and 7 of them in just the past 2 years when I was trying to find HR 7920 and HR 7921 here, which is apparently I can't get the text on this. I'm on congress.gov right now. They mentioned that stuff like what is listed under the official designation of anti-Semitism is recognized by the government was stuff like saying, not just Holocaust denial, but saying that like the Jews killed Jesus. So basically, the book of Matthew and the book of John, as stated in the New Testament of the Holy Bible, is illegal now. So not just your right to free speech, but your right to freedom of religion is countered by this bill expressly. And saying that like, Jews control Hollywood. Again, look at any actor or any like roast or jokes that have been told at the Oscars about who controls Hollywood. You can't outright say it, but you can joke that they control Hollywood. Same thing with the record industry. Name me a famous producer, a famous record CEO, records company CEO, and I will show you a person of a particular demographic. Same thing with anybody who's ever owned CNN, anybody who's ever owned Fox News, anybody who's ever owned MSNBC. Most of the anchors of those. We could go on and on and on. As of right now, the entire cabinet, the entire Joint Chiefs of Staffs of President Biden, every last one of those people is Jewish. Now, if you look at the COVID response team as appointed by President Biden, every single one of them is Jewish. Also, you may notice that the CEOs of GlaxoSmithKline, of Pfizer, of Moderna, and Johnson, not Johnson Johnson. I think is it S.E. Johnson? I forget the Johnson big pharma company. All of the same demographic, but to acknowledge this is to be anti-Semitic. Even if you don't say, "Oh, it's bad," even if you don't say, "Hey, I think there's something wrong about this," or "Hey, there's something sinister about this," if you just say the unimpeachable fact that 2.4% of the population has an incredible amount of wealth and power. They're 42% of all billionaires in the United States. Look it up. 2.4% of the population. But these people, of course, do not have undue wealth, undue power, or undue influence. And, of course, they do not pass redundant bills through Congress multiple times a year and waste taxpayer dollars to ask the government to spend even more taxpayer dollars on their specific pet issues. To even acknowledge this fact, to acknowledge your lying eyes is a hate crime, ladies and gentlemen. But my voice is tired, and it's been 37 minutes. But just know that this bill, it's getting a lot of traction and people talking about it in the news because it's so blatant and so expansive, and its demands for money and for the use of not just the federal government, but the secret federal police of the United States, as detailed by what a lot of people like to refer to as alphabet agencies, or the feds, being the ATF, the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, the CIA, all the rest of the Department of Justice, the Secret Service, the Office of the Treasury, the IRS, all the above, of course, being weaponized against people on the regular in the United States. These people want the express money and privilege to weaponize these groups in their favor. But again, to say that is not just not an unfair characterization or a myopic focus on a particular group when there's many groups doing this, or any of that. No, it's an explicit hate crime, and it is some kind of violent act to acknowledge this level of power. It makes you a bigot, it makes you a white supremacist, it makes you a Nazi, it makes you a monster. To acknowledge objective reality. Okay, war is peace, freedom is slavery. What is it? The last act of the party was to eliminate truth itself, and Yuri Bezmenov called this process demoralization, where the socialist government will begin to do openly evil and hostile shit and then gaslight you and say we're not actually doing it, and they know you're doing it, and you know that they know that you know that they know they're doing it, and having to accept a lie that everybody knows is a lie is the final act of demoralization. Well, here you are. You're in 1913, post-Tsarist, Bolshevik Russia. You're in the Socialist Republic. You are in Weimar Germany right now. Do not believe your lying eyes. That would make you a monster. Never acknowledge that there might be any kind of credence to people who might express a sort of negative stance of any particular kind towards a certain demographic of people or their patron nation in the Levant. Don't do it, because because even if these people fail to literally illegalize and criminalize the free speech against this lobby, this demographic, and this nation, I assure you that it's against the terms of service of YouTube, and at the very least, if I was a monetized channel, this video would be demonetized, and there's a high likelihood that this video will be struck down for hate speech at some point shortly after it's posted. So if you're watching this and you find this interesting at all and you're still here with me 40 minutes later, download, save this video. None of my shit is copyrighted. It's not monetized. I'm not incorporated in any way. I not only condone, but I fully endorse and encourage you to rip my stuff down, to repeat it in text or video, repost it anywhere you want, on any platform you want, clip it in any way you want, critique it in any way you want. That is the case for all of my videos on my channel. This is just, a public service announcement for the purposes of education and critique of the United States government and its interest in the pro-Israel lobby. Okay, thanks for watching.